Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Aksar Tariq, Editor-in-Chief of the CXO Media Properties in Pakistan. I'd like to welcome all of you to our CXO Watchtower Fireside. We're very grateful to our speakers for today who are able to join in and pull out time. We were just talking about Zoom fatigue and talking about cyber sickness and keeping things in mind, the way they are during this pandemic, which seems to not end anytime soon. We're very grateful that all of you could take out time to join us today. I'd like to quickly introduce who we have on the panel today. And what I'll do is also introduce the topic, what we're discussing today. Today's session is powered by Comtel, and we're hosting seasoned industry experts from the IT industry. We have with us Ms. Sadaf Sheikh. She is the Chief Information Officer at Pepsi, who brings with her 2 decades of experience in the ICT field. We also have Chief Technology Officer at Habib Schools and Habib Education Trust, Ms. Rabia Salim, who has demonstrated experience in planning, development, implementation of cutting-edge information solutions to address business opportunities. And of course, we have with us Mr. Shiraz Ahmed. He is currently leading the Information Technology Department at British Council Pakistan. And he has a diverse experience in information and digital technology, digital transformation, process automation, enterprise architecture, and IT operations. With that, I'd quickly like to just welcome all my panelists and quickly do a round of introductions and have all of you talk a little bit about just your work portfolio before I drop in some difficult questions for each of you.
So, a very little background. I am working as a Chief Technology Officer, as Aksa mentioned. My main job is to bring digital transformation into the education system. I'm working with a school of approximately 4,300 students. So digital transformation would be impacting 4,300, continued lives in the coming years. Other than this, I'm also working as a board of director for PMI Karachi, Pakistan chapter, where we are bringing project management as a life skill and project based, which is experiential learning into the education system. So this is who I am.
Thank you for inviting me. In my intro is, I'll just try to put it in a nutshell. I started my career in 2002. It's been a long journey. Currently, I'm working as Chief Information Officer for PepsiCo Pakistan and one of the few female CIOs in the industry right now. So it's good to see Rabia here. It's a kind of a lonely situation at the top. And very exciting topic. So looking forward to being a part of this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to you, Shiraz.
Yeah, so my name is Shiraz. I'm currently head of technology here at British Council Pakistan. We have a diverse portfolio here at British Council, leading from education to government service delivery and trainings and a lot of other social activities we have. Previously, I have an experience of over 16 years where I work for organizations like Telenor, S&P Global, and Standard Chartered Bank. So currently, most of my job description is related to the digital transformation of our British Council examination delivery, and also being part of our social delivery program, which includes government trainings and teacher training program and a couple of social activities which we are doing for Take a Child to School and other onboarding of government agencies on digital platforms.
Thank you very much. And rightfully, as Sadaf said, when we were putting together this session, or many others, as a matter of fact, there are very few women leading IT, from the top, and it's great to see that today we actually have a very diverse panel. So sorry, Shiraz, if you feel a bit cornered today, but we're going to try and be as inclusive as. But I think it's great to have a mix of different people and different sort of verticals also, because where we have education, we have a large FMCG like Pepsi, and then education both fronts. So I think what Rabia is doing as well as you, and I'm going to quickly sort of now dive into what we're here to discuss today is, of course, your roles as IT leaders or evangelists in organization that's really evolved in the last. I think it's taken a complete shift in the last 1 year. Earlier we were discussing offline how initially we would have to make a business case of why IT is an integral part of business, but that's changed, of course, and people are for the first time, organizations are coming to you and asking you, what can you do to keep us afloat? And I think I'm going to start with one simple question. Looking back at the year that's been, organizations around the world, they've scrambled to meet new challenges of bringing their entire workforce online, enabling work from home capabilities, with entire countries on and off lockdown, travel restricted, all of these things. So what were the biggest challenges as IT leaders when you were including, we'd like to talk a little bit about scaling cloud capacity, developing that accessibility of virtual remote access in terms of training, learning, studying, working. So Rabia, if we could start with you, because education sector is something which was sort of late to the party when we talk about technology. So we'd like to start with you and then carry on the conversation.
Okay, so when we talk about schools, it's always about physical education, face-to-face education within a physical boundary of four walls inside the classroom. So this is what a school is all about. So when there was a pandemic announced on 28th of February last year, the very biggest challenge was to transform the school on the very next day to be like, continuing the digital learning on the digital platforms. And above all, the very biggest challenge was to bring the workforce on the digital platforms, which includes their capacity building and everything. Although the capacity building or the training of our teachers were the part of the daily, their daily activities, operations, etc. But to conduct the entire school online was the biggest challenge. So, it took some time for us to actually train the teachers for different platforms, different applications to run the school. But fortunately, our teachers especially were very much, have accepted the change then that, we are going from a change cycle, that it took exactly 8 days, only 8 days to convert our whole school system on the digital platform. So I feel one of the very fortunate person that maybe we have predicted or worked proactively for this kind of a pandemic, that we were training the exact employees with the changed mindset and training them on different digital platforms so they can be a learning person sitting at their homes, and we are sitting here on a hybrid kind of a model. So that was the biggest challenge, but fortunately, I guess we were prepared for that. It took 8 days for us to running the entire school on a digital platform. But yes, these were the challenges.
All right, Sadaf, and we'll now move on to you, because obviously the kind of work and the kind of industry you're in was something that, of course, there was no way it could be shut down. It is a service which, addresses everyone from every strata. So over to you.
So, Aksam very rightly pointed out, a fast-moving consumer good industry, snacks and beverages both. So we have Frito-Lays, which is Kurkure, Cheetos, and Lays. No matter what, pandemic or otherwise, snacking does not stop. So, and we're a nation of munchies, so we love our snacks and beverages. So that is something that obviously required a very quick turnaround time in terms of accelerating the digital transformation for the rest of the workforce, creating a digital workplace. And it's a little bit, going beyond the usage of stuff like Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So essentially changing the mindset right down from the top to the people in the marketplace. The ways of working changed, and those had to be communicated, trainings had to be conducted, solutions were already deployed, but the way in which we operated before that, okay, so if somebody is traveling or working from home, and they would like to join a meeting that's in progress, they would connect via Zoom to a boardroom, versus everybody in the head office operating virtually, remotely, somebody operating from Pakistan, somebody from outside of Pakistan, connecting 100% of the audience virtually, going from one-off virtual meetings and connect to everything going digital suddenly. It was a bit of a change in the way people operate, the way people collaborate, the way people communicate. And with the added stress of lockdowns and the economic difficulties that came with the initial lockdown, So there's the line of business work, then keeping the shop open, lights on operations, versus making sure that we're not just sustaining, we're also gearing up for growth post-pandemic, because initial assessment was that 6 to 8 months things would normalize, and we had to plan for 2021 as well. So the biggest challenge for us was not a deployment of tools, because I know a lot of sectors, for example, education, they were not very pro tech, because most of the education was happening on premise, on campus. Companies like PepsiCo, which are global and sector and region oriented, we were already, I think, on Zoom as a platform. We were already using a lot of technology. But what actually changed was that technology moved from being a facilitator to a disruptor to being something essential. A board meeting that used to require us to travel to Dubai, for instance, was now all happening virtually. A town hall happened virtually. It was the first time in the history of the company that 2,500 people connected virtually for the town hall, and we did virtual activities, virtual giveaways, etc., awards, rewards and recognition segment. So it was a very different kind of a lifestyle change, something that is going to kind of stay with us even post pandemic. And you have to then also think about the wider ecosystem. For example, your distribution partners, your bottling partners, your retailers, are they equipped to deal with e-commerce? Are they okay to adopt technology? So they're a very lean organization when it comes to Pepsi Cola International, but we have a huge set of partners out there, be it telecom partners, be it distribution partners, be it bottling partners. And that's the network that you need to tap. Getting them on board, cascading technology to them, transforming their SOPs and working operations so that they're able to support us. Just moving 2,500 people to tech is not the goal. Making sure that those 30,000 people who are supporting our operations in the various capacities are also on board. Plus, like you mentioned, manufacturing hasn't stopped a single day. So we had to ramp up our tech on the, on the manufacturing front as well, ensuring the entire supply chain and manufacturing support from the technology perspective is there, because a lot of it is automated. So, it's
as you mentioned, it also comes to my mind that business efficiency. So it's not like getting 2,500 people on Zoom or Microsoft Teams was the end goal. The goal is to keep that business efficiency, and obviously, because all the business continuity plans that otherwise all organizations had in place, no one had, I think, a plan for a pandemic or
for pandemic spanning 18 months. And Alhamdulillah, from the snacks perspective, Pakistan has been the fastest growing snacks market globally in PepsiCo. So despite the challenges, to be able to support, and it's a company-owned business, so we manufacture, we distribute through our partners. So not a single day's downtime. The efficiency shot through the roof. People, despite lockdown, people would assume that, okay, with 3 months of lockdown, sales kharab hui hongi. But instead of that, whatever the losses were, we were able to recoup, and that was only, facilitated through tech, because people could not meet in person. People could not have those morning meetings, those brainstorming sessions. So technology goes beyond just collaboration. In this case, it is a core business backbone now. It is the infrastructure which drives the business. It is the engine which drives the business. So I think the CIO's role is evolving as a result of that. It's not just a lights on operation kind of thing, but more towards driving the business, powering the business, enabling business success through technology driven initiatives. And be it the go-to market, be it manufacturing, be it distribution, be it storage, be it even agriculture. So smart agro initiatives, initiatives like recycling, water sustainability, efficiencies in our production as well as manufacturing processes, efficiencies in distribution, efficiencies in reporting and analytics.
Yeah.
Based on data, then you formulate your strategies. So all of this has kind of like put the CIOs and the CTOs into the mainstream in the boardrooms, and all decisions before they're made, everybody is looking at us. Okay, how will technology help us achieve this faster, stronger, and better? So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Shiraz Saab, if you'd like to add more to what Rabia, in addition to what Rabia and Sadaf have already talked about in terms of large scale challenges that enterprises have, and how, of course, you've countered those.
Yeah. I think I can relate to both Sadaf and Rabia, issues they are facing, because technology was an enabler, for having, it says like just to enable business to do their operation and stuff like that. But in our roadmap, if a technology is there, but it is not part of the enterprise architecture you have, so that's where the problem comes in. So previously, I think before pandemic, most of the organization have the IT as an enabler, not as a part of the enterprise architecture. But as Sadaf was saying, once you make it part of your enterprise architecture, your efficiencies, your processes, your deliveries, or whatever things you are doing, it really make it more efficient, and then you can just look into it at what part of my organization is it's running more efficiently or not, and then you can just do it through your analytics, and it will be awesome. For British Council, we were like technology ready, as we were already being part of some like we were already using Zoom, Teams meetings, stuff like that, but was not really part of our enterprise architecture, or where actually our processes, our business was running on it. So once the pandemic hits us, so we have the platform ready, which really help us to scale up the things and make our deliveries well. But I can relate to the Rabia when she was saying that training school teachers, we were training about like 8,000 government teachers, and then making them to like understand Zoom. And I think the first thing which we generally learn is how to mute your mic, or how to like disable your camera and so on in a meeting. So but I think things evolved after it. It was like just a startup thing, and then the ecosystem developed. People start understanding, teachers start understanding how to use technology, how they can use the platforms, and then also in organization, our heads, our directors, or our board members start understanding, okay, how we'll adapt to the situation. And then we are now running at like I think 100% work from home, and people are chipping in with their deliveries.
Sorry, I was on mute. One of the things that, a general theme that's come about is the 80-20 IT landscape. It was upside down because IT planners, have long anticipated that remote technology would obviously account for approximately 20% of their workforce, with remaining, 80% in the office. Obviously, that was changed around, and a lot of things like VPN functionality and IT leaders committing to, of course, secure networks. Despite the fact that it was, as all of you mentioned, that it was a remote workforce, right? So it was not just educating people about how to get online. It was also about a lot of data security. It was also a lot about companies had to allocate devices and system resources. So when we talk about these resources, obviously it has two factors, and I'm going to break this question also into two parts. One is, of course, companies and how you were monitoring those corporate assets with remote backups, upgrades, ability to protect and disable compromised remote assets, because basically your employee or your workforce it's a distributed workforce. It's all over the country, spread out in different regions with very little sort of direct relation. So one is that portion, of course, and second is, of course, the integrity when it comes to it also comes to like the cost. Anytime I think companies were hesitant in terms of resisting towards technology, a big factor was, of course, the cost. So we'll move on to the cost later, but first, of course, I'd like to understand how, whether it was the use of applications, whether it was use of multiple devices that you had to give out, and enablement of that digitally distributed workforce. So Shiraz, if you'd like to go first. Yeah.
Okay. So I think the one of the better thing, or the organization which really done well during this pandemic, were the organization which were previously technology ready for, have this baseline drawn up for their cloud computing, and the VPNs were type of ready, but not like 80-20 or at like 10-90 type of stuff are working. Then they just need to scale up. I think the bigger problem was with the organization, of which I talked to other leaders, was the organization which have this information security saying no to everything, and then for every getting yes from information security or the governance people was one of the difficult things if you want to go to remote, or if you want to go to public cloud, or if you want to enable your employees to work from home or work from outside. So mainly the security or the GDPR stuff will come in and says, okay, we have this limitations, and you cannot do this and you cannot do that. I think that's where things got pushed on from. So instead of saying getting no from them, you start to getting that, okay, if this cannot happen, then what can happen? So it was a good learning overall for the technology. But for the technology, as I was saying, previously technology was part of the expense side of the balance sheet generally. So then as the pandemic comes in, it's make shift towards the investment part of the balance sheet, and that's where organization pursued it very well. But it was as I was saying, the beginning, organizations which were previously ready, but now we have this blockchain technology and AI and stuff coming up. So the organizations which have at least have a baseline or something understanding in their organization structure will pursue well. If there is any God forbid, not like pandemic we have, but if we have a technology disruption, but organization which have their basic baseline drawn for the AI and NFTs and blockchain technology, so they will do well. But the organization which will keep this IT stuff in the expense side and don't make investment there, they will really struggle.
Absolutely, and I think you're right. Those companies were fast to adopt and fast to sort of pivot. Sadafed, if you'd like to add on to this.
So, just adding on to your question and what Shiraz has mentioned, I think the 80-20 rule is no longer valid, because the percentage of workers who will be remote may not necessarily be 20%. A lot of organizations, including PepsiCo, we have been looking at many jobs and seeing, do we really need for those people to step into the office on a daily basis or only on a need basis? A lot of multinationals, banks, and even FMCGs have restructured the ways of working. Return back to work is never going to be again 80-20. The future of work has changed. So essentially, many roles will permanently become remote. A lot, and it's not just for tech companies. So what does that entail? So whereas you're investing in technology, you're saving on real estate. You're saving on a lot of other costs. So companies have released additional floors, saving up on real estate costs. That cost gets reinvested in the form of technology-driven initiatives. So it's left pocket, right pocket in one way. But the reason this is very dynamic and this is going to stay is because with the millennial population and Gen Z coming into the workforce more and more, they being more tech savvy, they wanting to work for organizations which are adaptive to change and which are transformational. So they would rather work for a company which takes the requirements of people into consideration as well as their own business requirements. So a lot of working mothers, a lot of people who want to telecommute, previously, given the way the standard work environment, corporate sector or educational sector, often finance sector was structured, if it's a board meeting, if it's a presentation, you have to be physically standing there. But that norm has kind of like been broken, and it's not changing anytime in the near future. So a lot of these jobs will stay remote, and companies and people have adapted very well, and over the last 1 year or so, to accepting the fact that a Zoom meeting with video on is just as effective a communication tool as you sitting across the table, and it's probably much more cost and time efficient. You save up on all the fuel and time that you would get in your car, reach a venue. So a 1 hour for a 1 hour meeting or a 2 hour meeting, we would often take a flight across another city or another country and then be back just for the 2 hour meeting. Whereas you're saving up on a lot of those logistics and travel related costs. You're saving up on a lot of time and energy, which essentially has led itself into higher productivity. So when people say, but there's a caveat to that, there's a work-life balance, you need to put a hard stop somewhere. Obviously, you need to do that. You need to structure your day in such a way that you have very defined work timings, work zone within your premises. And secondly, not every job can be done remotely. For some things, you really physically need to be in office. So it's going to be, in my opinion, a very hybrid model. And this hybrid is here to stay because people have realized a lot of myths have been broken about technology, about remote working, about productivity. Companies have not just survived, they have excelled, they have thrived. So, that mindset concept that unless everybody is in the same room, people are not working. If I can't see you, that means you're slacking off. So I think a lot of those, generic stereotypes have been broken, and it's a great opportunity, especially for women entrepreneurs, especially for students who could not really afford to go into a 9 to 5 scenario, who cannot step out of their house to become a part of the workforce. So I think definitely a lot of positives coming out of it. And it's just a matter of organization gearing up for continuous investment in tech going forward so that they're always future ready. So future ready is a mindset. It's not just about technology, it's about being agile in terms of the way you think, not just in the way you do projects. So if you have an agile mindset, like Rabia mentioned, it took them 8 days. That stems from having a bunch of people who have an agile mindset. They could pivot very quickly, they could adapt themselves to a changing situation. We did something similar. I mean, we had people at all levels of hierarchies and education and experience and diverse backgrounds. We were not sure how quickly and how comfortably they would adapt to the changing scenario, but they surprised us. So stepping out of the comfort zone, continuously challenging yourselves, continuously improving the way we respond to the changing landscape, keeping an eye out in terms of data security, especially when working remotely, investing in infrastructure and connectivity, that in itself, a lot of gaps came up. That's one area I think we're still struggling with as a nation, as well as a lot of companies would tell you. Many gaps in telecom and connectivity came up as more and more people became tech oriented. In a household where only one device used to operate, now 4, 5, 6 devices are operating. Challenges of bandwidth, challenges of connectivity, remotely or otherwise. So, we ended up spending a lot on upgrading our connectivity and, investing in those areas, which would ensure that going forward, we are able to maintain this agile hybrid remote / on-prem work scenario. So exciting times ahead. I say look on the bright side.
Thank you, thank you. I think that covers a lot of aspects that we were, of course, tarying to take a deeper dive into. Rabia, if you'd like to bring in the perspective of the education system, because that's something as both you and Shiraz both talked about, specific to challenges, specific to remote learning, and for schools, obviously that's a high risk, vulnerable sort of place to be in, because you are catering to students of all ages, you're catering to teachers, you're catering to a lot of different people at the same time, right?
So I'll start with, yes, you have correctly mentioned about students from all age groups. So we are catering ages 5 up till, age 15 and 16, because we have the college as well. So catering the learning needs of all the age bracket was, yes, a biggest challenge for us, but you started with the remote assets. Fortunately, our teachers are already equipped, with the assets they should be having and they were using it even inside this, like, schools and the physical boundaries in the classrooms as well. So the asset was really not a challenge for us, but yes, to provide the same kind of a learning to the students at home was the biggest challenge. Fortunately, during the pandemic, what I have observed and experienced is that, as Sadaf has rightly mentioned, that initially she has to attend the meeting, just has to travel for 2 hours back to back, like, meetings, etc., etc. This pandemic has given us the opportunity to collaborate and work with people from across the world. And there were so many people in the education sector and even in the other sectors who were really voluntarily working to uplift the capacity of the education system and provide the learning from all across the world. People like us who are, like, working for the global communities were able to collaborate and work with people, bringing people from all across the world, training and, like, uplifting the capacity or the trainings of our teachers here. Number one. Number two, as far as the students are concerned, yes, this was really, as Sadaf mentioned, that we are working with Gen Z. To build that kind of a system within the school is really difficult. But during this time, I guess we were really able to bring in the people with the right skills, right mindset to interact with the students. Because now in these 2 years, because pandemic is still here and it's not going anywhere, and what we are expecting, it will remain there for the next entire academic year. So the students who are passing out and who will be, like, going into the universities, etc., it's really difficult to prepare them from, like, as a hybrid model. So I guess the most fortunate part was we were able to have different people, bringing them on board, bringing different learning sessions for our students. And as far as the governance part is concerned, the security of the data itself. So as a school, we truly believe that our data should not only belong to us, and the data which I'm talking about is of the classrooms only. The teachers were willing to, like, share their learning and their data. This was the challenging time for the entire education system of Pakistan. So we really worked last year to uplift the education of all the schools instead of focusing on our education system one. And for the cost, yes, Habib is a non-profit school where we are proud that we are providing education to the students of all the social backgrounds. So yes, cost was the biggest factor, but fortunately enough, we were able to have, like, different applications, softwares provided to the students and teachers free of cost. Like Microsoft is here, Zoom is here, and many other, like, educational apps. We were able to use it in the classrooms, which were all free of cost. So technically there was no expense. There were no remote assets being, like, provided by the school system. So we enabled the existing infrastructure and tried to utilize it to the maximum potential of the teachers, so that they are not overwhelmed with the things, other than because, there was so much stress at homes where they are dealing with so many responsibilities, especially working women. So keeping that in mind, we just try to make it simple. So our motto was keep it simple, no complexity, and just to utilize whatever is there, available with them. And if it is not there, then the school was really open for them with all the, facilities. And we created a hub, a learning hub or a support hub, where we were available 24/7. So yes, the responsibility of IT people were increased, but now after almost, in fact, a complete year, we are very much confident that teachers are so much trained to do many things on their own. So this is kind of an achievement that we have achieved during this pandemic time, where people from all across the world come together and, transform the entire education system, ready for the future world. So yes, right now we are ready to work on the future workforce.
So I think that sounds very promising and something I think all of us who've been in this field, we've been advocating for this for many years, and it feels like we're finally heard and people are understanding and organizations are finally ready to embrace those as CIOs or chief technology officers or head of IT departments. You all are embracing those challenges. You're welcoming them because it's something that, you sort of, in your careers sort of geared up for it. One thing that, we've also seen, and according to research also, a lot of these Asian countries, including of course Pakistan, or enterprises and economies like Pakistan and Asia, there are like, there was one solid I think feedback that we had, that there was not enough conversation at the board level or at the big table when it comes to talking about technology, giving that importance to technology as an enabler, as all of you rightfully mentioned. How, as in your experience, because each of you are heading that department in your organizations respectively, how has that evolved, the role in the C-suite, a say on the table, making people understand? So I understand that each of you were initially perhaps, at the beginning of your careers, maybe only working as an IT head, and you were, sort of like just one part of it. Now you are the integral part of it. That's how it should have always been. Maybe we were late to the game, but of course, we've had to, all of us have had to sort of evolve and, change our ways. How has that evolved for you over the years, and what does it look like now as we move forward? So Rabia, we can start with you. There's a little bit of a rush that you,
Okay.
sorry, either one.
Sadaf, you can start then. It's fine.
It's okay. Okay, so I'll go first. So, Qudsiya basically, rightly pointed out that we are a little late to the party. But then it's not just Pakistan. I think it has been a challenge across the globe. There were very few industry verticals that were really leveraging technology to its max. So I think I wouldn't really beat ourselves up too much on this. In fact, what I find is that in the last 5 to 7 years, Pakistan as a whole, we've really accelerated on digital and digital transformation. The awareness is there at the C-suite level. A lot of CEOs, a lot of presidents, a lot of boards, they have incorporated chief digital officers, chief data scientists, a lot of focus on data analytics and technology. What the pandemic has done is that it has put technology at front and center much more quickly than it would have otherwise happened. So maybe 5 to 7 years fast forward, digital acceleration happened, that is happening now, would probably have taken another 5 years for us to materialize, because suddenly it became not just important but also urgent. So the importance was realized. I wouldn't say that people were not aware, they did not realize the importance. They said, okay, we'll get to it. But now it's like, no, we must get to it now before anything else happens. And this pandemic has created a sense of urgency on top of a sense of importance, and it's put everything right front and center. Now, what that has done is that it has put a lot of CIOs and CTOs in the driving seat of those conversations, rather than just being laggers on and just somebody who's supporting, to somebody who's driving and leading. It's become, from a business perspective, online is now, digital first is now something that a lot of companies are focusing on. Not just from a cost perspective, but also from a time, energy, effort perspective, from the messaging and optics perspective as well. That, if a message comes from the CEO or the board that we must adopt these technologies, and we must do so in order for us to survive and beat out a competition in the market, then obviously it's a very different messaging than okay, it's good to have, let's do it, let's maybe do it next year, let's talk about it. So the imperative has basically accelerated. Secondly, another big area, what I feel is that corporates have moved much more rapidly onto tech and have been more inclusive and more geared up, because they had the resources and the finances, and they took it upon themselves as a line of business investment. It's something which is critical to keeping the operations running, and keeping up with tech has now become equivalent to making sure that your revenue and your profits are coming in. But when it comes to not-for-profit organizations, when it comes to the education sector, I feel that we are privileged, we're part of that privileged few percentage where our children did not suffer as a result of the pandemic. But I personally know of, and I really feel for a number of entities, hundreds and thousands of kids who have gone without education in the last 18 months. And that is a reality that we as a nation, and all the the corporate as well as education sector together, we have to think about it as to how to be more inclusive. Not every school went online. A lot of kids, they've not received proper education in the last 18 months. What are we doing about it? How can we promote EdTech in such a way that the outreach increases, the coverage increases, and we can ensure that even if this pandemic stretches on, or if something similar comes in, because there was SARS and there's this and there might be something else, if schools are not operational due to any force majeure, due to any pandemic, due to any natural disaster, are we only going to educate the top 5% and their kids in this country, or are we going to do something about it? I think that's a dialogue that requires all of us to come together, be it as part of a CSR initiative for most of the corporations, be it as an agenda item for Digital Pakistan, be it the government of Pakistan initiating something, and then the corporate and education sector kind of jumping on board that bandwagon. But something or the other needs to happen, and it needs to happen at a much wider scale than it's right now.
Absolutely, and I think both our panelists, the other ones here, can back you on that. That we've been fortunate when it comes to adapting technology at a government level, private sector level, NGO level as well. And Rabia and Shiraz, we'll move the conversation to you over here.
So I personally feel that yes, you are right regarding the say of the C-level person, but I guess I was very fortunate enough to have a C-level position in a school is something really, it says a lot about it, that the school was really willing to have IT in the education system. Having said that, inside, during the entire last year, it is not us who are now going to the people who are the main stakeholders with the changes or the requirements of this very uncertain time. It is them coming us with the requirement that this is what is required in the future of our school system or the education system itself. The very best part about, I think, about Habib is that, as Sadaf is talking about CSR, being a non-profit school, I guess in a very limited capacity that we can do something about the school. We did that last year. We did train teachers or the school system, non-profit schools who are completely funded, are not having any kind of technology and no equipment at all. So we try to build their capacity so that they can do something to run the education system in their school, so that at least students are having something instead of having nothing there. Because education, even now, it's not about digital equipment. It is just about providing the education through a digital transformation medium, maybe. So it's about a different mindset, not a different use of the equipment itself. So that is what we try to learn, and then share the knowledge among the community we have here in the school system here in especially Karachi, and not only Karachi but in Pakistan as well. So yes, we try to uplift the education system, not of our own school, just to make sure that our school is running and our students are having the education, but we did that for the other schools as well. Second, yes, being the C-level person, we are sitting on the driving seats, because now I guess the future of the system depends upon us, how fast we are bringing in the change, how reliable it is, and how prone to changes it will be in the future world. So it's not only about the pressure, it is about the responsibility as well. And we as the IT drivers have to be really, very much proactive of thinking about the future, that this is what our students will require and this is what our teachers will require. So I guess this pandemic has given us a mindset to think out of the box, and not only thinking, but also implementing that kind of a change and planning for that, proactively. You were talking about the cost and budgets, etc. But this is the time when organizations, as this fiscal year is about to end, so every organization is now working on the budget itself, and there is a drastic change in the budget this year that we have, that every single academic or the educational need is somehow related to the digital part of it. So IT is not a facilitating department anymore. It is a front-end department now, which is the prime factor of running the system, whether it is an education system or any other system. The best part is that the people sitting at the top and the people who are not, maybe who are generation X and who have not been educated or worked in this digitally transformed era, they can now understand the need of this thing because they have been impacted by the lockdown a lot. So they are now convinced that this is the future of the system. So yes, our jobs are much easier. Having said that, it is more of the responsibility that, the relaxation comes with more responsibility. This is how it is going hand in hand. But it is challenging and it is exciting that we are bringing in some change which will impact the future lives of our students and our country as well.
Very, very well said. And I'd like to, Shiraz Sahab, if you'd like to add something on the level playing field that IT finally has, or is at least getting closer than we've ever been before. If you'd like to add something on that.
Right. I think Rabia and Sadaf have really explained it well, and I think I'll endorse it. I think one of the comment I would like to add that being agile is good, but this pandemic has because previously our TCOs or our business cases used to run through the Scrum and financial and all the stuff. Your TCO need to be really gone through the it takes a beating to reach to the board, and then you explain the board and say, okay, we'll plan it next year. Right, but this pandemic, or they really now understand that okay, this is not only the enabler or facilitator type of thing which are coming up, but now this is the driving thing which will make us drive in the ecosystem. And also, as Sadaf and Rabia was saying, that it's not every child who has been adaptive to this technology, but part of I think as an enterprise or as a person who can make something in the make change in our environment is that generally my experience is that it's the enterprise which really drives the change in the environment, and then they create the demand in the ecosystem that now a child, if he has to start using Zoom or start using digital platform, and that's where the demand starts rising up in our ecosystem, and then people start adopting to it. So as with the great power comes great responsibility. So as a technology guys, it's not only we running now, transforming from Skype for Business to Teams, and from Teams to Zoom, and so we have to really understand that where we'll be standing in next 2 to 3 years, because this technology and platforms are coming up, and currently we are in the phase of transition, or we can call it because it's a saying that the world will not be the same. We'll say that it's a pre-pandemic or post-pandemic world. But I think what I understand is that we are currently in the transformation phase. And the thing will not be the same which we currently are. It will get into the operations, but very differently. And once this transition phase ends up, the end operation will be very different from what we are currently experiencing. So be ready for it. And as we were discussing in the beginning, that the organization who are more adaptive and have the baseline ready will pursue and grow more, and will have more of the market share in it. and the organization which keep this as a, okay, we are doing well, this much of customers are now onboarded, this much of transaction has been done, and now we are growing at 10% or 18% of market drive. And then suddenly, as we end this transition phase and then come into the operations, thing might be very much different, which you're currently experiencing.
Thank you very much. I think that really elaborates, especially on the points that both Sadaf and Rabia had shared. One thing that I found to be sort of like a common theme, and I think Sadaf also elaborated on it, that driving or struggling to find that work-life balance is important. Where hybrid workforce, or where all of these technologies have made it easier for us to be available online or to be remotely accessible anywhere, anytime. It's become a work from anywhere culture. Organizations also need to ensure at the same time that employees understand and feel a part of the company culture. Their goals are also aligned, and they also work effectively or happily under this new model. What are you, in your IT leader capacity, how are you trying to be proactive in considering the needs of of your colleagues? And you also feel that pressure. I feel when Rabia said that having that एक step तो हमने ले लिया है, that we are online, we brought everyone online, but then what next? Because obviously it doesn't stop here. I think it actually starts here. So what next in terms of a lot of people, because of the kind of situation, social situation we are also in, and economic situation we're also in, a lot of people are feeling they're grieving, they've suffered loss in the last 1 year. Keeping all of those things in mind, as well as, of course, the business side of things, or the professional side of things also. How are you in your capacity, trying to draw that balance within your teams, within your organizations, and then, also working on defying burnout, because that is a real challenge, which enterprises have now begun to realize that it is happening. It's true. So Shiraz Sabu, we can start with you here, because I think offline you were mentioning a couple of things.
Yeah, so no, I was studying a Harvard study. It said that there's no work-life balance. It's between doing priorities, what you make more, things which you are you give more priority, you'll spend more time on it, and things which you are not giving priority will spend less time. So there is no work-life balance, especially once you have your office is your home, or your office is your mobile, and your office is your laptop. So there's no work-life balance. Now you have to balance it yourself, instead of balancing by visiting office, or balance it by HR department telling you 9 to 5 is your job, or like you have to complete 8 hours. So work-life balance, I think, in the digital world which we are currently transitioning through, I think it's more between making priorities of what you want to do, what you want or didn't, and then efficiently use of your calendar, or saying no to yourself. Actually, people say that it's difficult to say to someone else. I think for technology people, it's more harder to say no to himself, because they are more excited to do stuff, and then they start burning out once you are saying, because it's difficult to say no to yourself, because it's okay, yeah, I'll just push this one thing more and it will make things better. And then there's another thing, and then there's another thing, and it goes like this. And secondly, like employee well-being is, I think, is a very good thing, which currently at British Council HR have initiated, which they really give their employees the different perspective of how to use your home or your laptop or mobile more efficiently, take breaks, to understand things a bit differently, instead of taking stress of replying to an email or attending an call, because as Rabia was saying, that now we're connected globally, so our time starts 9 o'clock in the morning, but in Bangladesh it's like 7 a.m. in the morning, Pakistan time, and if you go to the UK time, it's like 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening. Or if you have people who are at the other side of the like in the US or stuff, then it's night time. So it's between you who have to balance it out, and saying no to yourself. I think you have to learn it like that, and that's how I think organizations too have to start learn about how they will balance this 3 to 4 balls. One is for the employee well-being, delivering the stuff to the customer. Third is making the projects very well. So they have to balance it out in between.
So, in the beginning, when the lockdown was very first announced, we were definitely not prepared for it. Especially being the IT person, we were the responsible drivers of the system. So yes, we had to work more than 24 hours, and we did that. So there was no work-life balance. And gradually with time, we learned that this is not creating a productive kind of an environment for the system, and above all for us as an IT team. So yes, we learned with the experience to creating some norms for us. And yes, as Shiraz said, being an IT person, it's really very difficult to say no to us, to start with. So we try to learn how to be very self-aware about ourselves, about our emotional state, and about our mental state. And that is what we did with our teams, and creating a proper norm of working norm, that these are the times when we can work with one another, especially in this education system, because everything will ultimately be impacting our students, that we cannot afford it. So yes, working with time, learning experiences created a kind of a environment now that we are very much working with a balance of our personal and professional lives as well. So yes, where mental well-being is really playing a major role, role, that people are now coming in with more passion, because we have cared about them. So now they are caring about the system and about us. So it's a win-win for both the parties.
So Sadaf, we'd like to take this to you now, because you were rightfully mentioning in the beginning that to draw that balance, जहाँ पे इतनी convenience है of working from home or working remotely, especially for mothers, or especially for those who are sort of like juggling a couple of things, which I believe most people have been, for the last 1 year. How do you see, or how do you really lead that or integrate that within your team as well?
So, Putya, like I mentioned, the ways of working have changed, and at an organizational level, there is an understanding and awareness, as well as an acceptance of the fact that just because somebody is working from home doesn't mean that they're partying. They're actually working. They're not slacking off. They're as productive as if they were sitting in the office. However, from a facilitation perspective, PepsiCo as an organization, as an employer, it is not just inclusive, but it's also really highly focused on employee well-being in general. So there have been many initiatives. For example, we have virtual fitness channels that are there. People can join those channels, avail instructor-led sessions as well as recorded sessions. There have been a lot of online counseling sessions where certified counselors are available on helplines, free of cost. Employees who are feeling the need to talk to somebody dealing with stress in their immediate family, facing burnout symptoms, creating that awareness, providing them with the opportunity to talk to a certified counselor, either anonymously or otherwise. They can just pick up the phone and dial that number or connect via Zoom. So all of this has gone a long way in terms of putting employee well-being, mental and physical health and safety at the forefront of everything. So it's not just about giving people a laptop, an internet device, and a connection at home. It's also about realizing that when we work from home, it does give us a lot of benefits. Like you save on your commute time. You are, maybe able to put in extra hours in terms of that time that got saved. You are able to juggle and balance and multitask a number of things simultaneously. You're also able to give more time to your kids, to your parents, to your family, all good. But ensuring workplace productivity while people work remotely is a little bit trickier. So we live in a country where we are faced with infrastructure related challenges like electricity, gas. Cost has gone up for a lot of people, and those were conversations that came up that, okay, we used to have air conditioning on all the day in the office. Now I'm sitting at home in my home office. I'm running my air conditioner 24/7 or whatever. I mean, 18 hours a day. So, who's going to bear that cost? So a number of conversations around that came up, and the company addressed that. I mean, we found ways of working around that, because these logistics, unless you're an entrepreneur, you're running a business from home where you by default operate from home, a lot of burden in terms of extra connectivity requirements, extra space that is needed, where you and your kids and your spouse can work in separate rooms, connected online to Zoom simultaneously. Maybe a 4 MB connection was okay for you, but now you need a 20 MB connection just to facilitate that. Some people don't have the luxury of having 4 separate rooms in the house where 4 people in the family can sit and take those connects. So how do we facilitate employees, not just in terms of their mental and physical health, but also in terms of the logistics? So we offered a roster-based system. We offered a lot of other supports as well as an organization. The biggest of that was to be able to provide platforms where we set up a virtual tech bar where people can connect and get any kind of technology support online. People could connect to a virtual cafe. They could hang out and have those water cooler gossip sessions that they kind of miss out on, when they're hanging out in the cafe, etc. So a number of things that were happening in person were moved virtually, but there is still definitely a challenge. Zoom fatigue is still a real thing. There are ways to combat it, and it's a constant, progress, and it's a constant ongoing effort that needs to be put in. As a manager, I find that I have had to practice a lot more empathy, because if you look at the people around you, there are people who are falling sick in every family. Continuously hearing bad news, even on television, has an impact on you. It causes depression and other symptoms. So a lot more empathy as a leader is required across the board, regardless of which industry you're in, because we're not machines, we're people. So even though we're working with tech, and tech can solve a lot of your problems, but still there's a bunch of things which unfortunately technology, as of now cannot solve. So it's just a very different mindset. We have to be more empathetic.
There's no, I think, replacement for, as you rightly mentioned, there's no replacement for human connection. No matter what kind of technology we might have. Yeah, so there's no way that we can do this. However, of course, with it, it's got a lot of advantages. Right now, also, I believe, Sadaf, you're sitting in Lahore, I'm guessing. Yeah, so Shiraz is sitting in Islamabad, and Rabia is sitting in Karachi, and I'm sitting in Karachi. So just having that kind of access, that kind of connectivity, and Rabia also mentioned earlier on that they had global experts coming in and actually helping in, because earlier on everyone was obviously they had their own routines.
Exactly. So in a town hall and digital day, we were previously limited by, okay, this guy is sitting in New York. How do we get that person to come in? We were able to pull in a lot of international talent, both within PepsiCo and outside of PepsiCo. That was amazing. I mean, people we otherwise would not have had access to, because they could fly in just for a day for that session. So definitely a lot for the knowledge economy, a lot for a lot of exposure which otherwise we wouldn't have had. Yeah, and it's going to change the way people look at Pakistan, by the way, from a technology landscape perspective, and that's something which is huge.
So we have 2 questions. One is if each panelist would like to mention what worked best for them, and the other question is, in one sentence, what would you say is the future of work? So I'd quickly like to have each one of you answer this before we wrap up.
So I'll go first, Putya, because I would need to jump off. Yeah, so essentially digital acceleration and digital workplace, that's what's worked best, creating a hybrid work environment. And, that's probably something that we're going to be focusing on going forward as well.
Rabia, would you like to go next?
Growth mindset and creating hybrid workplaces worked best for us.
Over to you, Shiraz.
Right. I think one of the best suggestion I can give is to continuously learn and adopt, and this is how the future world will be. The organization or as an individual who can want to strive in the future have to be more adaptable and have to continuously learn and unlearn. This is how the future will be.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you to all our panelists for joining us today. Thank you for taking our time. This session will be available on our Facebook page, IDG Pakistan, and we hope to engage with you in the future as well. This was a great learning session as usual for us, and we're thankful for you all for taking our time. And we hope to stay connected in the future and keep learning more from you. As Shiraz rightly mentioned, I think learning is one thing which is going to be continuous at any level, any stage that we're at.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. It was great having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Allah
sir.
much.
Again,
Take care.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Take care. Allah Hafiz.